Segment one, it's not a judge, Magistrate 101. So let's start with the biggest misconception. You hear the word magistrate, and you picture somebody in a robe hearing cases. There's no courtroom. There might be a gavel, I think. So what is a Kentucky magistrate?
So in Kentucky, magistrates are the elected members of the county's legislative body, and here in Kentucky, it's known as the fiscal court. Here in Hardin County, we have 8 different magistrates, 8 different districts, and each magistrate, along with our judge executive, comprise the fiscal court. And so we all, when we're in court, we all have the same powers and the same amount of votes, just 1 vote apiece. And so the judge executive is in the name executive. He's not a judge either with the robe in the court, but he runs the day-to-day operations and executes the executive duties that the court lays out for him to execute for us. Our magistrates, we represent citizens who live within a specific district, and as I said, my district is number 2. But we also, so we're the voice for those citizens in our district. That doesn't stop someone who lives in, say, Rineyville or Westview or wherever to give me a call and have a problem in their area that I don't represent. We all feel like we represent Hardin County, but we're only elected by our certain citizens in our district.
Brian we're talking yesterday, said there was some history there from the late 1970s. Brian, did you want to talk?
Yeah, so Kentucky literally rewrote the book on Kentucky revised statutes. And at that point, we did away with some things like bail bondsmen. If you are picked up and put into our jail system in the state of Kentucky, your bond is figured out by the court system. And then you as an individual will deal with the court system directly, revolving paying of a bond or issuing a bond. And there's not that middleman. Then there were a lot of other changes to the laws and procedures. And one of those was the establishment of a separate thing called a fiscal court. And your judge executive no longer hears speeding cases and DUIs and things like that. They're running the county government. And a simple way to put this, I guess, is a judge executive is kind of like a mayor, and all the different magistrates are kind of like the city council, but on a county-wide level. I guess that's dumbing it down about as easy to explain it as anything. But this all changed in the late 70s. So if you're a person who's old enough to remember that, it is very different than it used to be. But Kentucky is an old state. It's a very old state. So some of the laws, the way they were written and the terminology isn't really applicable to the current modern world. You and I laughed about this, Phil. Mm-hmm. You have to, when you're taking an oath, swear that you've never fought in a duel or been someone's second in a duel. Magistrate Saltsman, I'm pretty sure, never fought him. Wonder he couldn't have taken the oath. But have you personally ever even known anybody to be in a duel? Doesn't really come up these days. So
it really doesn't. But that's just Kentucky for you, really.
Still on the books.
That's a great Commonwealth, not a state, right? But yeah, that's good. That's cool. So back to you, Kenny. So the fiscal court, 8 magistrates plus the judge executive. That's the county's legislative body. What does the body actually vote on? So we vote. There's several different things that we can vote on. We oversee the county roads and the bridges. We oversee the EMS emergency services for our ambulances. We're over the solid waste and the recycling department, the animal control, the county buildings, emergency management, and the budget, which is the big one. And we set the tax rate for your county for the county taxes. So there's several different things. We also approve the personnel hirings and firings. We approve I had another train of thought there that I was going with, and I forgot where I was going with it. But yeah, so we have the employees and different things. We each month or each court we get a list of the claim that where the county has spent money, and we approve the spending of every dollar that goes through the county. All right, you mentioned the budget. Without getting into any specific budget talk, walk us through the overall process. How does Hardin County arrive at a final budget?
So, our judge executive, he will come up and he's charged with coming up with the budget. He will come up with a budget. At that time, it's what they call the judge's budget. He usually he works on that for several months. He gets with the department head, finds out their needs, their want, their wish list, and kind of puts that in the budget. He narrows it down some. He decides what's good for them, what's not. And then he will present that. This last couple of years, it's been presented to the fiscal court in a meeting, and then after that, we usually have a finance committee meeting. And this last year we started. I was trying to think last night. I couldn't remember if we started at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, but we didn't get finished with that meeting until late in the afternoon. We brought in lunch, had a working lunch, and so we kind of had a long day. But when the magistrates, when the court receives the budget, we get it, and then we have it on our own probably a week or two before we actually have that committee meeting. So we have a chance of ourselves. And personally, I go through it line by line and look at each thing. I look at last year's budget. Actually, it's the current year budget, and kind of compare it to our next year's proposed budget. And then I also look at our lines of what we actually spent this year, of how much we actually budgeted, to see if maybe we're over budgeting certain things. And then, as I said, we all meet together, and then once we're all together, we do it again. We go line by line. Anybody has a question, what is this for? Where's it from? We get those questions answered, and then we work together as a court to come up with, either we decide to either accept the judge's budget as proposed, or in those committee meetings we work and make changes. And then once the changes are made, or if we decide to stay with it, we have a first reading. We read the budget as presented, either as presented or our changes. We vote on that. We have the vote. If it passes, then we have to send it to the Department for Local Government in Kentucky, and they review it, make sure there's no mistakes, make sure everything is legal and correct. And then that comes back to our treasurer. And if there's anything that needs to be taken care of, she takes care of that. Otherwise, if everything was good, we have what we call a second reading of it, and that's when we actually adopt the new budget.
And I think that shows. I think that shows, Phil, that no one person can have an agenda or a specific pet project or something that, unless it is agreed on by a majority of at least 5, it's not going to go through. And I think it's great that we don't have 9 people who exactly agree on everything and rubber stamp it, because that could get dangerous. You could have all kinds of things happen with your county government, with your funding, that the majority of people don't agree with, but you could get 9 people to 100% agree on. And I think it's good to have some back and forth and some discussion and some opposing viewpoints. I think it's very healthy. Otherwise, like I said, it could set a dangerous precedent if everybody just voted the same all the time. And I think, again, without getting into specifics, I think Magistrate Saltsman would agree. There are times that there are others on the court you agree on a specific instance with, and then completely opposite of that very same person on another issue.
Yeah. I think that's good too, because if it was just everybody going to agree, then it'd just be one person, and you wouldn't have everybody else.
Yeah, we have to remember that we represent our district, and we have to look out for things in our district. But we also have to remember that every decision that we make is going to affect the whole county, not only now but in the future, also for future generations. And so it is a long process. You mentioned that the budget is a long process. It's a several month process. On the judge has a little longer process because he's got to come up with it first. So, but we all take it very serious, and it's a lengthy process. And as I said, the DLG goes over it. I mean, they're not telling us where we should spend our money, but they're just making sure that the lines are correct and things like that. So it's good that we have that second oversight also.
Oh yes, I agree. All right.